Welcome to another episode of Inspire People, Impact Lives. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, Managing Partner, Northwestern Mutual, Madison, Wisconsin. And today we have a very special guest in Pete Hardesty, speaker and best-selling author of his book, Adulting 101. So Pete, welcome to the show.
Josh, thanks so much for having me.
So his book is coming out April 6th, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, number two. It's green. It's this one. Adulting 101, book two.
Book two. We didn't want to go with 201, Pete?
I wanted to. I got to say, I don't love the book two, but I'm like, the only color is the green and blue. What is this, you know?
That's all right. And I want to share a quick quip on Pete and I don't know each other well. We share a common interest in fine cigars. And I had noted, and we become friends through that group. And I noticed that he wrote this book, and I run a leadership podcast and saw that it was focused on mental health in adults, which is a big passion of mine. And we speak on this show quite a bit. So I just reached out to Pete and said, hey, love to have you on. We, I know it's a big part of promoting any book is getting the word out there. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. It's great to be here. You guys got to know, Josh is kind of a legend on these in these groups, in these cigar groups. He'll be all humble about it, but he can bring the heat.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of fun together, and that's the biggest thing. And then we share that common interest of really nice cigars. So
yeah, for sure.
So Pete, tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive in. Kind of growing up, where you are today, and then we'll ask you some poignant questions on the topics.
Yeah, thanks. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and ended up going to the University of Virginia for college. And right after college, I went on staff with a nonprofit called Young Life. And I've been working for them ever since. They can't get rid of me. 24 years. And so now I live up outside of D.C., and my position is the divisional coordinator for Young Life College in kind of the eastern part of the U.S. And so I oversee and supervise our college work, and we have work in my kind of geography in about 65 colleges. Great family. My parents are incredible. They still live up in Baltimore. And I have one younger sister who's married with two girls. My nieces are the apple of my eye, 16 and 13. They just started driving. So I feel like I've enjoying life more than I should be.
No, I don't think there's such a thing.
That's true. That is true.
No, you got to continue to enjoy life. Otherwise, what's it for?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's awesome. I always kind of start with people it's so different for everyone, but when did you start becoming, who you are today? The author, the speaker, this mentor to many. When do you feel like that started for you?
Josh, I feel like I've been becoming who I am for my entire life. I wanted to name the first book, Adulting 101, Book 1, Mistakes That Almost Derailed My Life. And if you could please help or learn if anyone could learn anything from them, I thought this is great. But I've really had some incredible mentors, and through no fault of my own, I just really stumbled into some friendships and relationships with some incredible people. And they've been so gracious and generous to me. That started to kind of plant some seeds that I thought, I should be doing this. I should be living my life like that. But I would say the seed of the book maybe was 5-6 years ago that was planted. English was the worst grade I got in high school. No one's ever accused me of being a writer. I would say it's a full-blown weakness. But for sometimes our weaknesses can end up to be, I think because we don't have a lot of bravado around them, we can actually use them in ways that maybe we don't use our really, 10 out of 10 strengths.
So now this is your second book. So talking about that weakness, did you utilize a ghostwriter to help you with it? Or was it just great editing on your publisher's part, or what was it?
Yeah, the only ghosts I had were the ghosts that I see in my own apartment because I live alone. I wish I was a ghost sometimes. No, we wrote the whole thing, but I wrote it with one of my really dear friends, a guy I mentored when he was in college. Because in between there, I lived in Virginia Beach, but then I worked at James Madison University for a good portion of time, 13 years. And that's where I got to know a lot of young, sharp, hungry kids that I say kids, but, while they're in college. And so, no, we just kind of stumbled through it and it took a lot of grit. And we didn't really have a huge editor for the first one because, first time authors, they're like, all right, just put something together. We'll see if it hits.
Yeah.
And we had very unexpected success with it. More people than my mom and my sister bought it. I thought, I know my mom and my sister are going to buy a copy each, so I'm going to sell at least 2 copies. But it I think it really touched a nerve. It touched a nerve that maybe school doesn't prepare, and I'm a big fan of school, but maybe school doesn't prepare us for the real world like it should. And so, that once, our publisher very quickly was like, hey, we're going to do another one. I'm a much bigger fan of the second book than the first one. The first one's good, don't get me wrong, I think. But it's more about adulting on the outside, professionalism, finances, relationships, how to treat your boss, how to interview, time management. The second one, though, this one is about adulting on the inside. Self-awareness, emotional intelligence, how to have a healthy relationship with social media so it doesn't ruin our lives. And I'm a fan of social media too. And then the whole last half of the book is about mental health. So we recruited 5 counselors from all across the country to kind of really speak into that content. They have a combined 120 years of actual clinical counseling experience. And so we feel like this could really be of value to some young people.
Oh, that's awesome. I want to get back on topic a little bit later, but I want to first talk about how 5 to 6 years ago, you got this inkling to write the first book, right? Mm-hmm. And so was there a certain inspiration or something that came to you, or was it an idea that just came to you in a dream, or how did that come about that you're like, you know what, this terrible English student that's now become an adult through some life lessons and some great mentors, I'm going to write a book. Like, how did that come to you?
It's all the credit goes to my co-author. He was in his late 20s. I had mentored him while he was in college, and we stayed good friends. Excuse me. He ran a Chick-fil-A. He owned a Chick-fil-A in Little Rock, Arkansas. And he called me one day and he said, Pete, I haven't cracked one of my college textbooks since graduation. I sold them all back that day. I haven't looked, I haven't even needed one. But I would do a little senior prep course for my seniors that were involved in our nonprofit. And 3 or 4 weeks, I'd take them grocery shopping. I wanted to give them everything I had in every arena of life to try to set them up to launch them for wild success. And I sent him with a little packet. It was a lot of sayings from my mentors, some stuff I've learned, some stories. And he said, hey, I've looked at that every couple of weeks. And I've even he had about 100 employees. I think that's average for Chick-fil-A. He said, I took my whole team through it over the course of a couple of months. They raved about it. He shared it with the Arkansas Operator Forum. They get together, and some of them took their teams through it. They raved about it. They came back to him and said, you have to publish this. And he had added some really great stuff about business stuff, entrepreneurial things. But he said 80% of it is still that packet you gave me. So would you consider writing this and publishing with me? And I said, Josh, I don't even have to think about it. Yes, I do want to. We were going to call it, also another alternate title was The Hearse and the U-Haul. Because I had this one mentor in Virginia Beach, I would always say, I get together weekly with him. And he'd start every 3rd or 4th meeting with, hey, Pete, he had this deep, gravelly voice. He said, you ever seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul? And I'd be like, Jack, I still haven't since 3 weeks ago when you asked me. He's like, of course you haven't, because naked you come and naked you go. So you better figure out what matters in this life and give yourself to it. And I was like, it's kind of weird. I was a young guy. I was a little weirded out. But honestly, that put like a splinter in my mind of we have to give ourselves the things that matter. And as soon as Josh said that and wanted to write a book, I thought, you know what? This has been something that also I've gotten feedback from some of the people that I got to pour into. And they came back and said, yeah, like that was the most helpful thing you did. So I thought maybe we could kind of get it out to a wider audience.
Well, it's about legacy, right? So what your mentor was saying is you can't bring stuff with you into death. You only are leaving behind your memories of you. And, I've always been told that you're 2 generations away from being forgotten. Mm-hmm. And for you, or hopefully for me, whether it's through this podcast or if I decide to write a book one day, like your name can live on through those words on those pages. Your legacy can live on further than just that book. And for some people, that legacy is their kids, is their grandkids. Mm-hmm. But so for some others, maybe whether that's you or me or others, like it can be something larger. It could be a game changer. And maybe this book is that for you. So with that being said, with the legacy piece of it, how do you see that translating from the first book to the second book. How did you get better to continue to build upon your legacy with this? Because you said you liked the second one far better. What did you take away in learning lessons from the first one to the second one?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, one, I've learned it's all about relationships. Even through writing a book, the power of what we do, and I know that you have a lot of C-suite. I know you have a lot of high capacity people that are listening to your podcast. Even when you get and you're running your own company, and even when you've started something, even when you have, I have a lot of guys that I've mentored go on to found stuff. A couple of people be on Shark Tank. I mean, really cool stuff. It's still all about relationships. And as much as this book, so this second book, I think is, the first one was kind of getting stuff ready and going the right direction, right? You got to get some stuff in order. If you graduate with 80 grand in student loans, you better get some financial stuff in order, or you're going to have a little mortgage, but no house for a long, long time, right? Mm-hmm. So this one though is about, being emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and then the mental health piece feels like it's so much more about the people to people and about relationships and about kind of our emotional maturity on the inside, growing up on the inside. One of the taglines is growing up is mandatory. Growing old is mandatory. Growing up is optional. Yeah. Because we've all seen those people. A lot of times celebrities because we want to know what they're doing, and they're 30, 40-year-old men or women, and they throw tantrums like they're 6. And you're thinking like, that person can sing really good or play football really good, but why are they acting like a 6-year-old? And it's because they haven't grown up on the inside. So I think that's, when I think of what this book could do, I think of what we do, even in your role of being a really prominent business person and kind of having impact way beyond Wisconsin, is we hold a crown above other people's heads and we let them grow up into it. I think that's what even a lot of CEOs, a lot of VPs, they have to be doing that if they want to really grow their part of the company or the whole company. If you're not developing people, if you're not saying, if you're not dreaming for them, looking at them, developing them, if you're just trying to wring them out and squeeze them out, your business is not, you might grow a little bit for a little time, but you're not going to have that exponential growth when you develop people and relationships. And they might even go work for someone else. But if you've cared for them, I really think one of the life principles is we reap what we sow. Yeah. And we know that in money, finance, relationship, we reap what we sow. So that's a way too long an answer about how I see the second book being about just relationships.
Well, I'm glad you went there because it's so good. Like holding that crown above their head and developing them into it is such a great analogy for the business owner or for the leader or the mentor to hold that and bestow that upon whoever they're mentoring. On the flip side of that, the person that's being developed, there shouldn't be an entitlement around that, but rather, I heard, as you said, the crown, what first came to mind for me was, I heard this saying a long time ago, and I try to talk to young leaders about it, is you have to carry the crown before you can wear the crown. So it goes both ways, right? So as the business leader or the mentor, hold that crown up here and develop that person into it or develop people into it. But for the person that's being developed, it's not an entitlement to you. You're not owed anything. Carry that crown well before you can wear the crown.
You give me someone who's teachable, really, really, truly teachable and hungry, sky's the limit. But you can be as gifted as possible. And I've learned this because I have to do some hiring for my role with Young Life Now. There's some really super gifted people that we maybe have passed on because if you're not teachable, your ceiling is just right above your gifting. And so you just can't, you give me someone that's teachable and hungry. It's like, okay, we can run then, we can go.
Yeah. And as you said, EQ, I've met people with very, very high IQ, but their EQ doesn't match and they just can't grow into the person that they're meant to be without those two things matching.
Yeah. That's been shown to be that, several studies, because it's the fun part about doing this book is the amount of research and I think we have 200 endnotes, which for like a adulting 101 book, maybe you shouldn't have, but we're like, I like to find studies that back stuff up, not just our, what we're saying. And there's way more stories in this one than the first one. We've learned that stories tell the truth and communicate in ways that you just can't do with just citing evidence. But I'm not going to cite some evidence. There were two studies that did a large long-term study, starting with someone's EQ and measuring all kinds of stuff. But at the end of 30 years later, the one indicator of wealth and happiness was EQ, was emotional intelligence. That's funny. Not your job, not your major, not grad school, not even your parents' degree of wealth, not all these other factors you would think maybe might have, and maybe they had small factors, but the one indicator of both wealth and happiness was emotional intelligence. And the fun part is it's not just some people have it and some people don't. You can actually build it. It's a skill. I'm not gifted that way. I know some people are real perceptive and they just aren't in touch with their own emotion, and other people's and real self-aware. That's not me. I'm like a knucklehead. You could bang on my head and it's going to make a hollow sound. So you can build it though. It's a skill just like anything else.
So you talked about EQ and self-awareness earlier, and I've often seen a correlation between those two. How, in your studies with all that you've done, because I'm just witnessing it from my leadership standpoint and people that I've developed and then also myself, I feel like the more self-aware you are, and especially your emotional vocabulary, you become better with EQ. But what are the studies, or what do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, knowing yourself is the most important thing you can do. At whatever level you're serving at, or whatever level because really, like if you don't know yourself, we all have blind spots too. That's the thing. It doesn't matter where you are in your company, you have blind spots. So I think the secure person starts to ask people about it. As I know a lot of your listeners are going to do, they're kind of in positions of leadership. And so they're going to be doing evals of other people. If you're not either being evaluated or letting them, your direct reports or other people that work with you, evaluate you, and that's a great time after you kind of do some evaluating, you can say, hey, what am I missing? How do you experience me? What are some of my blind spots? If you could tell me something with a complete degree of safety, what would you tell me? What does everybody say? Because everybody's got them. There's something in the office that everybody knows about you that you don't know. And so then it's kind of like, what's that? How do we go into that and lean into that in a secure way of wanting to get better? A little bit what you said. You either want to get better or you don't. And I think developing the self-awareness, developing emotional intelligence is, how to increase. I mean, I think that's having that inner circle where you can ask some in a safe spot. Journaling has been shown to increase it as you reflecting more. Because, a lot of us are so just running 100 miles an hour. And some of the best leaders I've found, one of my mentors said, for every 40 minutes he reads, he thinks and reflects on it 20 minutes. And I was like, well, that's wasted time. What are you doing that for? But when he spoke, people listened, and he was a very high, a very, very incredible leader. So journaling, reflecting, some of those personality tests, and I don't know if you know the Enneagram, I think they're helpful. Yeah. In kind of building, but you got to take them for what they're worth. They're not telling you you're exactly this and kind of boxing you in. It's more, what are your motivations for? How do you react to things? I think trying to take, Strengths Finders and an Enneagram and,
DISC, Colby.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs. Yeah,
Myers-Briggs. There's lots of them. And I love taking them because I love learning about myself. I love to know what makes me tick. I love to know how my team, like if I do it, I want my team to do it as well. Because then we can interact with each other better. We know our strengths and weaknesses. So I love those things. But you're right. They're not all inclusive, meaning like this is you in a box and this is the only way you are or you can't change. It's telling you, like Strengths Finder, for example, it's telling you a few top 5 strengths, and that's where you're going to spend the bulk of your time. That doesn't mean you can't operate in any other area. It's just meaning that you should operate in these areas the majority of the time.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. And the other, the other thought around that is there's 2 other indicators that I've used, and this is from a counselor friend that I have. If we have a repeated pattern in our life that we're saying, oh, here I go again. When you feel that, like it's either a reaction or you just have something that seems to happen over and over, like when this person does this, or in a certain personnel situation, here we go again, or you have a disproportionate reaction. Like I remember one time I was sitting in line, I think it was at Chick-fil-A or something, and Chick-fil-A didn't have it was like just each cash register had its own, line. And somehow the line had kind of gotten long for 2 or 3 of them. but there was another entrance. There was a side entrance. So I had waited there for 10 or 15 minutes, which was rare for Chick-fil-A. Usually they're a well-oiled machine. This person came in another entrance and went right kind of butt in line. And I was like seething. I was ready to rock. I was ready to just tip over the thing. And I'm like, all right, what's wrong with me? First of all, like, I even said something, which I never do. Sir, there's a line here. And he's, oh, sorry. He was out nice. And I'm like, wow, what's wrong with me? I'm not. So paying attention to those, if you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you off and you want to kill them, maybe thinking about ramming your car in, there's probably something under that.
Yeah.
That's not provoking that exact emotion. There's something under that maybe. So here we go again moments, or the disproportionate reaction moments can be signposts, I think, to saying, hey, there might be something else going on. And part of that is just that journey of digging a little deeper, finding out who we are, and then saying, how can I leverage who I am in my job and what I want to do? What do I bring to my job? Because that's the greatest part. There's greatness inside every single person. Yeah. If you're human, there's greatness inside you. There's gold. I don't know if you remember there was an old commercial with our two beach volleyball Olympic stars, Kerry Walsh Jennings and Misty May Trainer.
Yeah.
And it was about gold inside of you. And there really is trace gold inside every human being. And the highest concentration is around the heart, 0.2 milligrams, I believe. And so it's just a matter of finding it.
I didn't know that.
That was the commercial. It was like, hey, find the gold inside of you. I think it was for a deodorant or something. But I think that's a good illustration or analogy of, like, if you got people and you're working with people, they all have greatness inside of them. And part of, I think, a leader and what we try to do with some of these young people is unleash it, find ways to unleash it, avenues to kind of help them become who they were meant to become, because we all have this great potential. So.
Oh, it's good. And it's actually a great segue to care. And there's this great quote that most people that are listening have probably heard, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the ability to care is such a great leadership quality that I think in the busyness of work and performance and KPIs, key performance indicators, all this different stuff, we feel like I don't have time to care. And this can be a really difficult dichotomy for a lot of leaders. So how do you show you care, and what advice would you give for those leaders as the importance of slowing down to do that?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Josh. That is in our economy and in the pace of life has felt like it's gone up 100% every couple of years, right? Just how fast. We're not meant to know live time what's going on in the entire world every day. We were never meant to know that, but we know it, and it comes right to our phone and it dings and we're like, oh, that's crazy. And so I think, how do we care? What do we do? One, we show up in someone's life. We have to earn the right. And even, it doesn't matter what level you are at your company, all your people are volunteers. Everybody that works on your team is a volunteer because they can quit. Mm-hmm. There's some things you can make happen because of line authority, and there's some times that you probably need to make stuff happen through line authority. But most of the time, people don't follow titles and authority and line. They do if they want to get paid. But when true leadership is going and earning the right and then calling someone to something great, and that great can be in any arena. It's not just like, oh, just the medical world, or just the education world, or just the insurance world, or just the financial, or fill in the blank. So how we show that we care, I think, one, you have to show up in someone's life. And I also love this one study. This is a little older. This is like 10 or 15 years old, but this is a huge poll. 100,000 people in non-manual labor factory jobs. So it's something in, offices. Well, then they had a list of 15 things. What are the top 3 things they're looking for in their job from their boss? So it's for they were going to take it to managers. One, feeling in on things. So feeling on the inside things. Number 2, this one shocked me. Sympathetic help with personal problems from their boss. And you're thinking, like, what? That's crazy, Feeling in on things, sympathetic help with personal problems, and then full appreciation for a job well done. So I thought, man, that's a lot of people. And it was like there was a big gap before number 4. So how we care for people is our college kids is, we want to help them with, be a listening ear. I think, again, we always say that our human body has 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that maybe we should talk half as much as we listen. I'm half Italian. I talk 10 times more than I listen. And that's been a skill I've had to try to almost force myself. I'm like, I'm not going to be a very good leader if I cannot listen to someone and actually hear them. So we listen to them, we show up in their lives, we earn the right to then, and we love them, no strings attached. I think that's the thing. We're not trying to get anything out of them. And people know if you're trying to get something out of them. If you really care for them for real and care about them, that's when it starts for me, is caring about them. Because honestly, Josh, sometimes I don't care. I wake up and I'm like, I couldn't give it. I mean, I just don't care about these kids. So then I have to remind myself, I have a gratitude practice every morning. I write 10, I journal. First thing I do, I make tea, walk over, 10 things I'm grateful for. I try to do them from the day before, but so I'm allowed, and that starts to change my whole perspective of, I start to care about our fellow humans. And then my mission is kind of college centric. I'm kind of focused on colleges and universities, which is a critical time, right? I mean, the 20s it's a critical time. So anyway, that's another long babbling answer to.
No, it's great though, because you have, I love the part where you say you're 50% Italian, so you talk as it is. But one of the things that came to mind there is you have, there's a great skill set that I learned along the way for someone because when we want to talk, it's really about us, right?
Yes.
Like when you're feeling this sense of wanting to say something, that's not about them. That's about your innate thing, like internal to say something. Like you're trying to either fill in the blanks or feel important or sound important or something. So it's a great skill that I learned early on was ask a great question and shut up.
That's a good word. If we all
really
took that to mind, the world would be better, right?
Right. Ask a great question and shut up. And then if you feel like you need to say something, ask another great question and shut up.
Right.
So it's one of those skills, and I've gotten really good at question asking. And now it's part of as being a financial advisor, you have to ask great questions. Now in more mentoring and leadership, it's more about, hey, I'm trying to help people find out their why, their passion, and where do they want to go more often than I'm doing anything else. So if I'm not asking questions and I'm prescribing, that's again, not about them, that's about me.
Yep. No, you're right. And people remember exponentially more of what they discover for themselves than what they're told, right? I've seen all the percentages about that, but if you just tell someone something, but if you ask a question that can remain as a splinter in their mind, that's actually teaching. The best teachers actually teach through questions. Yeah.
Like if you go to a networking event and what's everyone talking about? Like, oh, what do you do? What they're doing there is sizing you up.
Yeah.
Now, if I run into at a networking event, Pete, and I say, hey, what's the best thing that's happened to you this month?
What's one challenge you've been dealing with the last couple of months?
Right.
You can pick personal, professional, yeah.
And or I say, let's say I find out they have kids. What's the favorite thing about your kids and being a dad to your kids right now?
Hey, when you have a free day, what's your favorite thing to do?
Yeah.
I'll tell you something about,
They're going to remember you out of all the other people that they met because of just the one or two questions in that interaction, how you made them feel versus, well, what do you do? Well, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like it's just a sizing up.
There's a little scorecard. Everybody's got that. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What position are you? You have a card? Let me see that position.
Yeah, let me see your card. Well, maybe we can link up sometime.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So it's good. So we've talked a lot about emotional intelligence. Chad wanted me to make sure we asked about cultural intelligence and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, cultural intelligence. The last year of what's gone on in our nation, Josh, it could start to be. I feel like it's almost coming up as on equal footing with emotional intelligence, just because if the way of the future in any business is going to be, you have to be uber culturally intelligent because you're going to be dealing with people that are different than you. And I will say, I've done a bunch of international travel and have been involved with some of our work overseas, especially in the Middle East, but I've been to China and Africa and different places, but going back in the Middle East maybe 15 times and have taken college students. I've taken 7 or 8 trips over. It's so fun. I have so many funny stories from you take 30 college students who have grown up, a lot of them, it's their first trip, not a lot, maybe 5 or 7 of them every time it's their first time out of the US. College, they were all from James Madison University in Virginia, and I've found that some of the pillars of cultural intelligence are, one, humility. That if you really come in and you're not kicking a door in or kind of saying, one of my mentors would always ask me, or he'd always encourage me, exhort me to be a there you are, not a here I am person. So some people walk in a room, like you mentioned that networking event, they're like, here I am. I'm ready to meet people. And instead of there you are, I see you. There you are. Hey, there you are. Josh, there you are. Tell me more about you. And you're, like you said, you're asking questions. So are you a here I am or a there you are? I think that's, even though it's not under the cultural intelligence column, I think it really is related. If we go in with humility, that's the first pillar. Secondly, curiosity. A lot of people don't even care about people that are different than them. They don't want to know about them. They don't want to know about the differences. I was hanging out with a friend just yesterday from Ecuador, and she has an amazing story. Like, she just became a citizen a year ago. She has this amazing family, so many different, and I've been a lot of places in South America. I've never been to Ecuador, didn't know anything about it. So I got to ask her and say, tell me more about it. Like, so curiosity is the second thing. And then the third one is service. If we come with a servant's heart, if we come as a servant leader I always imagine like a maitre d' with a serving towel over your arm, humility, curiosity, and service. I think cultural intelligence will come. Then it's just a matter of asking. I can't tell you how gracious people have been. And I'm talking about, you can go outside of the US for cultural intelligence, but now it's really inside the US. We are really, our nation is not going to be, homogeneous. It already isn't. And it's becoming less and less. So, and I think that's beautiful. I think there's beauty in diversity. Yeah. Unity, not uniformity. But I've found people are so gracious and forgiving. When I say dumb crap, if they know your attitude, not always. There's some stuff you also got to figure out, right? You got to do cultural intelligence training and all that, but I'll leave that to the experts and the workshops and all that. But if we can change our outlook and our attitude, I've found that people are just so gracious and almost want to tell you, hey, when you said this, it made me feel this. Don't say that again. And they maybe even laugh and say, hey, I've made so many mistakes, but I think because we come with those 3 things, I don't know, I've just found people in the US and outside the US, in business, out of business, are so forgiving and welcoming. So, but
you're saying face to face, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a totally different animal where we're attacking each other on a daily basis. That can get really ugly, and we don't need to go down that path. And then the other thing that came to mind is like the cancel culture, which again, we're not going to go down, but it doesn't operate for me, that doesn't give room for learning and graciousness, like you said. Right. Whereas like if you say something that was taken a wrong way, or maybe it was a wrong thing to say in an individual conversation, that person can say, hey, that made me feel this way. And you can learn from that and be like, okay, I'm not going to say that again.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And
I think that was more on an individual basis versus online or media or anything else. But yeah.
No, you're right. In person. Yeah. And I think it again comes back to relationships. That's one of the best teachers of cultural intelligence. Hey, go be friends with somebody that's not like you, no matter where you're from, no matter that's the best professor, right? You can read a lot of books. You can go to a lot of workshops, but go be friends with somebody that looks way different than you and grew up in someplace different than you. So
you said humility, curiosity, and
then service. So servant attitude. Yeah.
You know what, when you're saying that, it doesn't touch on curiosity, but there was a saying, and I can't remember it right now, that I read in a book with the Tibetans. They're greeting to each other. I don't remember the phrase, but I remember what it meant. And what it meant was, I honor the greatness in you. Mm. So their hello in passing was, I honor the greatness in you.
Oh, man.
And that touches on at least 2 of your 3 just in that one phrase that they say to each other.
Yeah. Imagine if we had to say that to everyone online, anything on a Facebook post or Twitter first. We have to start there. And then what are you going to say next? that would solve 90% of our problems on the online battles, right? If you really had to say that, hey, Josh, I honor the greatness in you. And then you're not going to say most of the stuff that a lot of people say stuff online that they would never even dream of saying in person, right?
Yeah. 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 Because you're not going to say it in person because you might get punched in the mouth. Right?
Exactly. You better be able to run really fast and you just stay anonymous online. Yeah.
That's right. Hey, I wanted to touch on real quick because you're working with the youth and you've seen this over the last probably 10, 20 years. How is working with millennials and now Gen Z transformed how either you're interacting, or what are you seeing difference between you and I's generation, then the millennials, and then Gen Z that you're now influencing?
There is still greatness in them.
I feel like there's a but coming.
But it looks a little different, right? So what we've seen is, and I think through good intentions, parents nowadays, have you heard the phrase snowplow parent? We had helicopter parents.
Helicopter I've heard of. Snowplow, I would imagine kind of a bulldozer, right?
Yeah.
I've heard bulldozing.
Yep, bulldozer parent. Yeah, the snowplow parent goes in front of their kid, clearing the way. So the kid's walking behind the snowplow. So we've moved from preparation, you know how it used to be, let's try to prepare this kid for the world, to protection. We've wrapped our kids in bubble wrap. We want no physical injuries. We want no emotional injuries. We want no rejection. We've gone from preparing the kid for the road to trying to prepare the road for the kid and trying to fend every potential failure and that is damage them. It's make them very fragile. Like it's make them very, I actually believe in this current generation, these 20 somethings more than anyone else I know. Cause I have seen them when they decide something. The fun part is they do have space in their life that they can go after. And so if they get a hold of something, a cause or an issue, gosh, they can drill down in ways that we didn't know. They're also so globally aware. I'm in my 40s. So when I was in college, it was just at the beginning of literally like the internet and cell phones. But I had to go, you know where I got my world news, state news, national news? The college newspaper. And I'm not that old. I hope I don't look, I got a little gray coming in. It's betraying me in my, but I didn't know, something didn't happen over in Europe and it didn't ping to my phone immediately. Like they're the most globally aware, but this is something that I think is key. They see people like you, Josh, and the platform you've built, the business you've built, the people you've influenced, the people you've impacted. And they say, I want to be like Josh. I want to be like Josh. They don't know the price you paid for 10, 15, 20 years of showing up and turning that flywheel until now. And so they overestimate what they can do, in a weeks or months, that they feel like I just want to, but they grossly underestimate what they can do over the course of years. And so I feel like they need, if you're in a position of leadership in companies, in businesses, you have to become experts on these 20 somethings, because that's who's going to be working 20 and even into the 30s, because that's how you're going to develop them, or else they're just going to come and work, and nobody works for anybody for 40 years anymore. I mean, almost no one. Right. It's always stepping stone. So unless you're really developing them and really learning about them, it's going to be a revolving door of even sharp talent people, because they're just, but if you develop them, even that, I've seen people decline a raise of $5,000 or even $10,000 while they're in their 20s, because they're like, you know what, I'm staying here because my boss believes in me and has developed me into someone that I think long-term, this is actually even a better spot. So anyway, I don't know. That's, again, I'm all over the place with that.
That's such a great lesson for people my age or older that are employing these people right now to understand that, is that they don't necessarily care about the money as much. They are very cause-oriented, and they are very conscious about their own development and mission-oriented. Yeah. Which is so opposite of the generation that raised us, right? And that their raising of us their lessons trickled into us, where we're more money motivated, success oriented. So that's a great lesson that you just ended there for employers out there.
That's good. Yeah. And again, they know if somebody's, I will say the other big thing that we've had a big growth edge on is giving feedback, because I don't know, I think me and you are kind of part of the same maybe generation, and we didn't like it, but just tell me exactly what's going on. Give me give me it all. I don't need an Oreo sandwich with the 2 compliments.
No fluff.
Just give it to me. I want to get better. I'm going to write it down. But kids now, I say kids, 20 somethings now, that's probably not the best. We found that they really want to be involved even in their feedback. They want to give feedback. Do you know that 72% of Gen Z believes that they deserve a raise in the first year of working? First year 1. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that expectation is going to be disastrous, right? Because year 1 comes, year 2 might even come, and they're not getting it. And 3/4 of them are like, they're expecting it. And I do think entitlement, there is some of that in there wrapped in because of the protection and never that everyone gets a trophy type of thing. Which I think almost all of it came from good intentions to really try to look after these kids. But failure is good. Mm-hmm. I mean, most successes are just well-managed failures, right? Yep. And most failures are poorly managed successes after a while. You kind of get to where, so I think it's when we don't allow them to fail, we're not building character and grit and resilience and initiative and all these things that you learn from failure. Failure hurts, but it can be the best teacher we have. Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time. I want to make sure that we get a couple actionable items in here and are able to play the word game. So we just had James Clear speak to our group, who wrote the book Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read that yet.
I have. It's actually right on the shelf right back there.
It's good. It's a great book.
Oh, such a great book.
And I know you mentioned some awesome life-changing habits in your book. And I always want to leave people with some actionable stuff if possible. Can you share a few actionable takeaways just with the audience from your experience?
Sure, would love to. I would say the biggest game changer for me the last, I would say 5 years, maybe longer, maybe 10 years, is morning routine. I always had a morning routine, but I never really put a lot of thought, effort into it. I'll also recommend the book Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Yep. He's got a short little, a lot of the stuff in our book. We actually have a big section on morning routine and creating healthy habits. I think morning routine is the one thing, if you were going to do one thing different, and it starts with imagining your ideal morning. What do you want to do? And I never really imagined that. I'd do some stuff. I had some spirituality practices. I'd meditate a little bit, read, exercise, and then I just get on my day. I never but I'd do it sometimes, wouldn't do it. But create your ideal morning routine, and then try to give it all you can to do that. And now that I do it, I probably get it 4 or 5 times out of the week. But guess what? That's better than 0. Yep. And 1 is better than 0. So try it once, because little things done over a long period of time equal huge things. Huge doors hang on little tiny hinges. So and I think morning routine is one of those hinges. You figure out your morning routine. So that's one, I would say. And we have a bunch of stuff in the book, and you can find it. I think actually Clear's book might have some morning routine stuff, and Hal Elrod's does. That's one. I would say learning the habit of reflection on failure and reflection on success. Tony Bennett, the coach of the University of Virginia guys basketball team, college basketball team, 2 years ago.
A lot of Wisconsin roots there, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, his dad. I mean, we're like so grateful that Wisconsin gave him to us. I mean, that's where I went. That was my alma mater.
We're not, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he might come back. I actually was worried when it was open. I thought he was going to go back, but he 3 years ago, he had the worst loss in the history of college basketball. Right? You remember in the NCAA tournament, March Madness, number 1 seed UVA loses to number 16 seed UMBC, right where I grew up, just an hour away from me. Never happened before. I think they were 132-0. Literally the worst loss ever as a number 1 seed. Embarrassing. I mean, I can't tell you some of the texts I got and just getting killed. The next year, he goes, and UVA is getting taunted, the players, the whole season, because they had the worst loss. He comes back and does what? Wins the national championship the next year. And he would say it was because he reflected on reflected on the failure, and then reflected on success as they were winning. Why did they fail? Let's not just jump back up on the horse. Let's actually find out why we fell off the horse in the first place. So reflection, I think, is one, and that's part of even the morning routine. The last one I say about a habit is around social media. I mean, Josh, it has the power to take over our lives. Mm-hmm. And so deciding, I think the habit, I mean, there's we have 2 whole chapters in this new book about just healthy habits around social media. Cause I don't think the answer is just we cross it off the list. Maybe I know for some people they've done it and their life is better. I think I can't do that. I still like it. I still want to do it, but learning how to use the airplane phone on my phone, airplane button on my phone, taking chunks of time during each day that I'm not on social media, not looking at my phone, controlling my phone during that morning routine, having it out, not looking at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Clubhouse, whatever your thing is, but deciding how much time you want to spend on it and then trying as best you can to stick to it. Cause it's like a voracious wolf. It'll eat it's with an unsatisfied appetite ever. You can't.
Social Dilemma, the Netflix special, really dove into that for anyone that hasn't seen it.
So good. That's such a great help. Yeah.
Great doc. All right, let's do the word game.
Okay.
So I already told Pete, but for a reminder for the audience, I'm going to say one word. Pete's going to give us either one word back or short response. The only rule we have is that he can't repeat himself.
Okay.
Ready to rock?
Yeah, let's do it.
Love.
Mom.
Life.
Spend it worthwhile.
Trust.
Not everyone.
Mentorship.
Jack and Doug.
Money.
Love of it is the root of all evil.
Education.
Necessary.
Power.
Can be useful.
Pain.
Is good.
Inspire.
Everyone.
Impact.
More and more.
It's good. All right. So the last question is favorite book of all time or one you most recently read you want to shout out, not your own.
Yeah. Man, there are so many good ones. I'm a really avid reader, Josh. I would say of all time, and it's kind of cheating, is the Bible. I think the wisdom in there, the stories in there, the adventure, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll in the Bible is insane. I mean, it's crazy, the stories in there. It's like, that's not in the Bible. Get out of here. Murderer. And how many people know Moses was a murderer?
Yeah,
come on. And buried somebody in the ground and tried to hide his body. It's like Moses, the 10 Commandments. Anyway, so if we take that off, that's more of a spiritual. I would say Prodigal God by Tim Keller, this guy up in New York City. It's short, easy, really good. The Gift of Being Yourself, really good about like the inner life, the inner man, the inner woman. And then Emotional Healthy Spirituality is good for some of that self-awareness, emotional intelligence stuff we were talking about.
Good.
By Pete.
All right. So Pete, how can the audience follow you? How can they buy the book? What's the best modal for them?
Yeah, thanks. You can find me at www.petehardesty.com, which is funny to me still. I also speak there. You can look at both books. The first one is blue. And that's, remember, kind of on the outside, adulting on the outside. The second one's green. This comes out April 6th. The best place to find them is wherever books are sold, Amazon. If you'd like 10 or more, you can just send a little email on that website, and I can give you a better price than Amazon. I can't beat Amazon's price for under 10 though, because I got to pay for shipping. But I'd love to help if there's ever any gathering of young people. It's a side gig, but I love coming and speaking and being with 20, 30 somethings, even college students, even high school. I spoke to, last year, I spoke to 2 or 3 public high school senior classes, whole classes. And, we kind of make sure we do it according to exactly what they want, but it's so fun. So Thanks again for having me.
No, you bet. It's been awesome. And we didn't even get into the mental health, and I actually really want to do that. So we may have to do this again, Pete, because I know you had a big part of your book on that. So, and that's a big topic. So we may have to do part 2.
Hey, whenever you want, man. Honored to do it.
Book 2, not 201.
Right. Yeah, the publisher said, well, 301, 401, they want to do more and more. I'm like, that's fine. They're like, well, we can't do 401 and 501. That doesn't sound right. I'm like, book 2 doesn't sound right.
It's all right as long as it sells, right?
Right. Exactly.
All right, my man. I'm going to sign off here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Continue to inspire and impact on your week.